Hey guys, Buckeye Bar Guys. We wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to us here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Great show we got coming up today. We're really looking forward to you guys listening and watching it. But just wanted to remind everybody, just remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the all notifications bell, that way anytime a new show comes up, you guys will be alerted to it. And don't forget to like the video and comment on the video. All interactions with us helps us continue to grow, and we appreciate your support. Now to the show. Welcome back, everybody. Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm John.
Today's date is Saturday, July 31st. Last day of July. Last month of no college football. We're 33 days from kickoff, and the Buckeyes are returning to the facilities on Tuesday here in just a couple days on the 3rd. First practice is the 4th, so we are into the good times of the year. The only thing that kind of eases the transition into the crappy winters here in Northeast Ohio for us, and that at least we get a good football to get us to winter.
We're almost there, man. I can't wait. Yeah, it's so third is you said 4th is the first day of practice, right? And
yeah,
then
that's what I heard. And third's check-in. So
and then September 2nd's the game.
Yep.
Awesome.
So 33 days. So yeah, pretty stoked on that. We've again, college football. It's the last couple of weeks have really been giving us a lot of little different headlines here and there. So that has been a welcome thing, as it seemed like we had so many weeks in a row where it was just like blah, like
it's been a crazy off season
that we didn't have much to talk about, and then really the last couple of weeks we've now it's like turned it into like high gear of things we could talk about. So I'm sure a lot of people have heard about the Quinn Ewers thing. We are going to get into that, and then we're going to also get into some of our thoughts about some of the offensive skill players that are getting ready now that practice is getting ready to start. Just quick before we get into Quinn, I know we talked about this on the last show, but I just thought about it. So as of the last show, Texas and Oklahoma did tell the Big 12 that they were not going to extend
See you later
after the media rights. So just quickly, a couple things that we've had happen since then is that the SEC unanimously approved their petitions to join the SEC. Now both universities have accepted the invitation from the SEC to join. So we have that. And I mean, it was a no-brainer. I mean, everybody knew last weekend that they were joining the SEC. But probably the more interesting thing is that there's now the Big 12 is accusing ESPN of basically trying to get other conferences now to pull other members of the conference, just so the conference could collapse, and
right.
ESPN doesn't have to pay the remainder of
they're torpedoing the Big 12 so Texas and Oklahoma could get to the SEC quicker.
Yeah. So, and they don't have to and I think the ESPN still, because they own part of the Big 12 rights, I think they still own 1.9. I heard it was like 1.8 billion or something like that on that deal. That
I don't know
that they wouldn't have to pay anymore. And then and plus that just gets Texas and Oklahoma faster to the SEC. They don't have to worry about that stuff if the whole conference would implode. So, I mean, I'm not going to get into it. They exchanged legal letters back and forth this week. So pretty much the Big 12 gave them a cease and desist letter, and then ESPN pretty much sent them a go prove it letter.
Right. We're not doing that. So kind of up yours.
Yeah. So that's what's going on. College football is, again, we've, Ryan Day mentioned this at the press conference. I mean, the Austin case that case that just got heard in the Supreme Court, realignment, name, image, and likeness, the transfer rule. I mean, just a lot of things that I've always felt that we should probably different things that should be changed in college football. I just never thought we'd be getting it all at once. And now it looks like the NCAA is going to decentralize. I know Emmert was talking about that. They've called, there's talks that they're calling a board of governors meeting they want to do a 22 person committee, that's been shared now, and to talk about starting in November about changing basically the NCAA's constitution. And so Like,
yeah, I mean, it's all happening at once. There's not really much you can do about it, but I mean, we'll see how it plays out. I mean, does Ohio State, they get a seat at the table, right, for that?
I would think so.
I mean, I don't care if they're SEC or not. They're still one of the big dogs of college football.
Well, and I mean, Gene's been on a lot of those committees. I'm assuming Ohio State will have, whether it's them directly or whether it's from one of the other big schools within the Big Ten, you would assume that somebody of note from the Big Ten is going to be part of these meetings. It might be Alvarez, but again, that's kind of like the same as Gene.
Right.
So,
yeah.
All right. So kind of the changing landscape of football. So that will take us kind of into our first conversation. So Quinn Ewers, and I guess Buckeye Scoop had this maybe a couple of months ago that there's been some rattling.
Well, it's been a couple weeks.
That there's been some rattling, but it really got onto the national just stage this week when Pete Thamel, he got it. Then so Quinn Ewers is thinking about not going to play his senior year. I mean, so for anybody that doesn't know, living under a rock, Quinn Ewers is for the 22 class. So the next class, the class that's going to sign their the earliest they could sign is in December. Join the next year's class is, I mean, he's the number one player in the country. I mean, he'll be the highest recruit Ohio State's ever gotten. I mean, it's a big deal. It's the quarterback out of Texas. I mean, generational quarterback. I mean, this is, even though Trevor Lawrence was the next generation quarterback, this is supposedly the next Trevor Lawrence.
Right. Well, yeah, that's Trevor Lawrence.
So that's the next guy that's coming in. And he's talking about he's going to reclassify to this class, and he could be in for camp next week. Literally, he might be coming to Ohio State as early as next week and joining the team. So that was a wow moment. It's something personally, I know some people, I talked to a couple guys on Twitter. I know of guys who have reclassified. Tony Grimes. I mean, it was a good point and stuff. It's just, I've never, last year that was a COVID season. I don't know what that did to Tony Grimes's football, if they did have high school football. And plus even the states that did have high school football, I mean, you look at, here with Sawyer, that a lot of guys didn't play to begin with. Right. So, I mean, Grimes might've just felt like, well, I might as well go. I can go now. They have a room on the scholarship. This is crazy to me. And a lot of it supposedly has to do with name, image, and likeness. He could go get Quinn Ewers could get a boatload of money if he goes basically to Ohio State right now. I mean, he's going to get, and they're talking about, the Alabama quarterback that's got 7 figures, supposedly. I think that's what he's looking at.
Right.
Part of it. So, I mean, just what do you think? I mean, this is wild. And this could be if this is going to be something now going forward, it usually just takes one guy, that knocks the domino down. And then,
I mean, and I think that's kind of what you're going to be looking at. I think this will happen more often than what people kind of will realize right now. Because like you said, it's really just one person knocks the dominoes over and it starts becoming more regular. I mean, we thought, years ago that, if someone sat out a bowl game, it wasn't going to happen that often. It's just one person, being selfish. And then it ended up being, hey, these guys are, thinking about their careers. They're thinking about not getting hurt in a meaningless game. And I just think that's going to happen more often if kids feel like they're ready to go to the next level. If they feel like, even if they're on the bench, a year on the bench at the university they're going to go to is more beneficial than another year in high school.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see it more often. Now, with that, though, I mean, there are a lot of kids that probably are chasing high school rings. I mean, I think that's still a big deal to a lot of kids.
Probably it's just
winning state titles with your brothers. I mean, those are the guys you grew up with more times than not. You've probably been in the city for a while.
I think it is. And then I think as of right now, you are absolutely 100% correct. I just think it's going to change. What this kind of reminds me of, I still remember an era when you would have a senior from high school basically decide he's graduating early and come in for spring at a thing. There was only 1 or 2 kids that did that,
Right.
And And I remember a lot of people, I mean, I remember listening to it on talk radio that, it's kind of selfish of these universities. You're taking these kids, their proms away from them and their graduation days, and that's their best friends. And you're kind of taking them away. And now it's like,
it's even a step further.
Now it's like half your incoming classes in there now.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think right now there's going to be a lot of that. I want to play my last season with my boys and all this stuff, but I think eventually it's going to come down to like, well, what's this? I mean, we've had how many kids? I mean, in recent memory, we've had kids that have gotten hurt their senior years of high school, then they've not been ready for their freshman years of college.
Right.
That's put them behind like a year or two then in the depth charts, and before they really get a shot of like.
Well, I mean, think about it, because in that situation, you're rehabbing first before you're doing really anything, getting comfortable with snaps, getting comfortable with reps, like establishing yourself on that depth chart, on that team. You have to rehab an injury first.
Yeah. And so exactly. And so, yeah, I think that this could legitimately become a thing. And I mean, I know there's a lot of people that are kind of distressed about it on Twitter, and I get it. Like, there's been a lot of things going back and forth. And, it seems like you've had literally have had one thing after another. If you just take Ohio State's thought process, so you have name, image, and likeness, then you have the realignment talk, what's going on with that, and now you have Quinn Ewers basically coming in. So there is a lot of distress that college football is changing, and I understand that. And I actually agree with some of the arguments you hear. Like, you don't want to see some of this stuff change, but then at the same time, it's going to change. Like, some of this stuff has been changing for a while, and I mean, this is not going to be, I mean, it still just kind of just blows my mind, just somebody of his like talent level. And, they talk about Tony Grimes, people talking about him going and stuff like that. Well, there was cornerbacks are a little different. I mean, I know he was such a highly recruited player too. I mean, there can only be one quarterback. And, what does this do for the quarterback room? Like, if he's there next week and now you have 4 quarterbacks, when you already knew that this was going to be an intense battle and that there was a chance after that this battle was decided and that you knew Ewers is coming in the following year,
right,
that you could lose 2 of these kids. Like so
let's talk about that.
So does this put us now into a threat that you could lose 3 kids? Like, because there are people in the Buckeye community that are, hardcore, like, hey, if he comes in and he's the best looking one, even if he's raw, you need to let him. That's 3 years of him as your starter. You need to let him start.
Well, I mean, what is raw? Like, if he cannot,
I think raw, not raw as in raw that he's doesn't have the experience that he has the natural gifts. Like, he has the experience, he has the natural gifts. Raw that he's just never been in. I mean, I don't think his offense itself, like Carroll, is going to be as complex as Ohio State's offense.
Right, but we know coming in, he has the strongest arm out of all these guys. Like, we know that if he's there next week, we know Quinn Ewers is going to have the strongest arm out of the 4. It's what does he like situationally? Is he mature enough? Does he know what these guys know about the playbook? Can he run an offense like these guys can? No. I'm going to tell you right now, he's going to have the strongest arm out of any of them. But, if Kyle McCord or CJ Stroud react better to pressure in their face than Quinn Ewers does, if they know where to go when something breaks down before Quinn Ewers does, then yeah, they deserve to start.
Yeah. He's never had guys like, Texas's best high school football state in the country. I mean, he hasn't had consistent guys like Tyreek Smith and Zach Harrison, right, and Jack Sawyer, in his face every single play. So yeah, let's see how he reacts to those. And I guess the best way to kind of he'd be the most raw. He'd be the most intelligent, mentally raw out of the bunch. He's had less time with the playbook.
Right, exactly.
So he's just. There'll be some growing pains on that side of it. He has the physical tools. There's no doubt in my mind that he can't start as a freshman but a college. Is he's at the level that Ohio State's going to be expected to be at this year? Is he ready to lead the team? And so it's a position that. I mean, I wouldn't want to be Ryan Day to be in it. I mean, he gets paid the big bucks. He's going to have to be in it. He was kind of already in that position because he was going to have to choose one out of these 3. But like now you're going to have to choose possibly 1 out of 4. And knowing that, it's also kind of got to be in the back of his mind, like, 2019, they had nobody behind Justin Fields, and Justin Fields was great, but because of, people transferring and stuff like that. like, if I give Quinn this job because he's the most, I think he's the most talented, and we're willing maybe to deal a little bit with the growing pains that, am I losing once the season, possibly even before the season, in the middle of the season? I mean, Kelly Bryant left in the middle of the season, right after the season ends. Am I losing the other three at some point over the next several months? Am I losing the other three? And then come spring, where I haven't been recruiting another 22 kid, and right now we're kind of late in the game, all the kids that they would be looking at have been committed. So like,
my bold prediction on that is not even that bold. Quinn Ewers wins this job in the fall. Not a single one of those three are on your roster next year.
And I would agree with that. I would think, you might be able to convince one out of the two out of Miller and Stroud. You might be able to come to say that, you're still one play away from being here.
They're further in their careers than McCord is.
Yeah.
Maybe you could say to him, hey,
I just see it harder with McCord. McCord has options.
Yeah.
I would have a feeling. And I have a feeling we'll be seeing a Ewers versus McCord game in 2 years
right
at that point, and a whiteout in Happy Valley. That could be a very possibility.
Well, they just got a big quarterback from Ohio for next year.
But that would be hard for them to turn down McCord if he was just eventually on the,
I was thinking about this, and we're not going to go that long into this, but what if he went to like a school like Florida State that, still gets good recruiting classes? Like, that could turn them around right away.
Well, there's three guys on this roster that could turn a lot of these schools, or like, a Florida State, a Miami. Any one of these guys are better than Tate. They would be much better off taking one of these guys.
Nathaniel.
We'll see how Sarkisian, we'll see how the kid that he got committed for next year, how he ends up doing. But, one of these kids, USC could come into, Miller or Stroud and be like, you guys are both West Coast kids,
That's I know.
We could use you, come home.
Right. Exactly. And with the Quinn Ewers thing, here's I know a lot of people are upset about it, but if the kid's ready to, go start playing college football, unless something's done already behind the scenes, and there's actual ink on paper, if you say, hey, we don't really got room for you this year, he could be in Austin next week. He could be in College Station next week. You have what can you do? And I'm not saying in any way or suggesting in any way Quinn Ewers is holding Ohio State, hostage at this point.
But he did throw it out there. It's been thrown out there now that he's willing to look. And you are right. Sarkisian could come in and be like, well, if you're ready, I have an opening. If you're ready to play, decommit and reclassify. We have a spot where you could reclassify to and come to Texas.
Right. You see what I did in the national title game with Mac Jones. Think about what I can do with you.
And
and that's a realistic thing. It could happen. I'm not saying it will happen, but
you got to look at all possibilities. And I'm not saying that it would happen too. It just could make for a very interesting August where, it seemed like, he said he wanted to have the starter picked within 2 weeks, and, maybe it was going to be a pretty drama free August, that we weren't going to have the JT Cardell August all over again. And, look what that did for that season. Mm-hmm. And, that kind of makes me nervous that this is a team, even with a new quarterback, it should be a contender for a national title this year. And it's just, I don't want a lot of hard feelings in the locker room that could possibly derail something.
Are you concerned with the fourth person taking first team snaps?
Yeah.
That's not ideal.
Day still needs within 2 weeks have to have a quarterback choice. He can't let that linger too far into it, because you got to get ready. You got 2 hard games to start off with. Minnesota is returning 20 starters,
10 on each side of the ball.
That's, PJ Fleck has got them going in the right direction. They're a much better school than they were several years ago.
And last year was the COVID year, and you had opt-outs and just crazy, stuff happened.
Yeah, so they are a much better university than what Minnesota once was. And even before Fleck took in, I can't think of his name now, the guy that had the health issues, he was starting to bring them back up. And, they...
Jerry Keel.
Yeah. And so, Minnesota's been a better football team over the past, 5 to 10 years than they were,
Oh, sure.
Before that. And so they got some respectability there. They always have a good offensive line. They always have good running backs, and they could
they return them all,
and they got they got a good receiving room core there. So, and they got their quarterback back. So they got some things there that kind of will make you worried. And then Oregon's not going to be a picnic game. I mean, it's not the same Oregon team that they were. I still think Ohio State has much better talent than them and will overwhelm them. But that is Cristobal has got them much more mentally tough than what they once were. The team that Jim Tressel coached against and Urban Meyer coached again to win those bowl games and win that national title. That was these aren't the same Oregon.
No,
teams.
These guys are. I mean, they are tougher in the trenches, but
so I mean, those teams you could push those guys around. They were undersized and they weren't ready to.
They're transitioning to a 3-4 though, so I don't know how big their defensive line is now. I mean, hopefully they got the right personnel to run that scheme because that will be difficult. I mean, Ohio State probably can see some success in the run game if they're not.
If they have the right talents, I mean, 3-4s have given Ohio State. I mean, Indiana's 3-4 has probably been the one that's given Ohio State the most fits over the last several years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they're ready to play it, if they've recruited the defensive size that they need on the line to run a 3-4, then it could be an interesting game. So, I mean, you don't need a lot. You don't need a lot of headaches coming into it. But at the same time, if Ewers is ready to come in and he says, I'm coming, I want to reclassify, Coach Day really can't say no. Like, it's got to be like, all right, come in. It's going to be, he just needs to be honest with him. He's like, it's not going to be a picnic. You're not guaranteed to start. And, if one of these guys are better than you, you'll get an opportunity next year to start.
Right.
But if one of these guys beat you out because you're not familiarized to the playbook that you need to be familiarized, then he's like, I'm going to go with the guy that gives me the better chance of winning because yes, I want to develop you as much as possible and be the guy that we all think you're going to be. But I also need to win the national title. And that's what I'm judged against.
Right. No. And I agree with that. I just, to kind of like circle back to where we were, I just don't like 4 guys taking first team snaps. I mean, at that point, I think Jack Miller really does become just an odd man out right away.
Yeah. And he might go. I mean, I wouldn't be
shocked because I would think at that point, you just got to look at, who are the 3 more talented guys who are probably the better guys. And I don't think there's anything wrong with Jack Miller.
No, but
I just don't think he's on the same level with those guys. I think
he'd be if he go. I think he would go back home out to the Pac. He could do really good things in Pac-12. USC could use him. And I'm not throwing Jack Miller out the window. It's just I agree with you. I kind of thought he was the odd man out in the spring, and now he could be really the odd man out because this is the next god is coming in who's on half of your fan base's mind should be the starter. And then on the other half of the fan base, the majority of them are like, no, it's Stroud's turn. And then with a portion of it that they should give the job to McCord. And I haven't heard anybody no
one says Jack Miller. And I know that's just from fans. So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily matter all that much, but no one says Jack Miller when we're talking about this. But I mean, I don't know how smart Jack Miller is. Hell, he could be Pat Fitzgerald's next transfer quarterback, though. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I think we'll transition away from that unless you have anything else you want to talk about, Quinn. But I mean, it's going to make for an interesting August if this happens. And I'm sure we'll have, if this does officially happen, it's going to happen probably within the next couple of days. And so we will have a lot more to talk about as right now. It's still just hypothetical, even though it seems like it's going that way,
right?
But it's just a hypothetical thing right now.
Well, my only thing would be the other 3 guys in the room. Don't send out cryptic tweets to tell them not to swing and miss or whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't always pan out so well.
Yeah. All right. So camp is starting next week, and that's going to be freaking awesome to think about. So we kind of wanted to do a little something, just start getting us ready for camp. So we want to talk a little bit about the skill position. So, basically we're going to just kind of who we think are going to be starters, guys taking the most reps, the quarterback, your running back, and your 3 wide receivers. Who are they coming to those 5 guys? And then, out of the offense, who do we think is going to be the breakout player this year? And who do we think is going to be the team MVP, offensive MVP? So do you want to just go back and forth, throw everything out at once?
Well, let's say quarterback first. So I'll go first. I think, and a lot of this is just from, what we watched in the spring, what we've gathered from, different insiders that we listen to.
And just to throw in a caveat, until we know for sure Quinn Ewers is not on the team,
I'm fine. I mean, regardless, I'm saying that CJ Stroud is going to be your starter. He's going to get your most snaps throughout the year. That's who I'm going with. I think him and Kyle McCord are kind of on their own level right now. And that's, again, not a shot at Jack Miller. He's a really good player. He's just not an elite player like those two are. I saw really good things from both of them in the spring game. CJ Stroud, I think, offers a little bit more athleticism right now. So I would say I think he's going to win. I think he can do just anything that McCord can do with his arm, but he can also do more with his feet. So I'm going to go with CJ Stroud. And he's been in the offense, even though he didn't throw a pass last year in any games, was in the offense for a year more, even though, it was the COVID season, but he's worked out with Mick a year longer. He's been with the playbook a year longer.
Yeah, that's how, talking about that stuff. We brought that up into the spring before spring practice, that really those 3 guys, they were all kind of on a more even playing field than a lot of people think. And honestly, if Ewers did come in, it would be kind of like the same thing. None of them have really went out and done anything in college to say the job's theirs. I agree with you on Stroud. That's who I'm thinking is the starter. Just based off what I saw in spring. Now, the thing I'm really interested in seeing coming here into fall practice is that I thought McCord was really, really good in the spring.
Oh, yeah.
And now he's gotten some playing time because he got to actually mix it up in the spring. He's on the team. He got his first true practice reps in the spring. A lot of times there's a lot of guys that take big steps between spring and fall. And if he's one of them, I think it's a lot closer than a lot of people than are giving it. I'm going with Stroud just because I saw what Stroud did in this practice, and I think he's got to be the presumptive starter in the back of Ryan Day's mind going into the fall. But I think McCord is right there, and if McCord is showing that he's athletic. He might not be as athletic as Stroud, but I've seen him. He can tuck it and run it. He's not Dwayne in that aspect. He's more mobile. He is going to be a throw first guy and running the ball. I think Stroud is going to be that too. It's just that Stroud's going to be more athletic, but I don't think they're losing too much in that. And if it ends up being McCord, so that is something I really interesting to watch out for, because I think McCord could take this job. I thought that in spring. I still think that now, because I think we saw when they threw out that practice video. He looks really crisp. And,
he does. Absolutely, he does.
And, he doesn't do a spin move. That's kind of a knock on him. Like, McCarthy, that's the one that's up in Michigan, right?
Yes.
So, he doesn't do a spin move. So, they're obviously going to lose that last game of the season this year. But, we're at a disadvantage there. But, but he's very, very talented. And so that's interesting to me. I think it's Stroud. I'm going with Stroud with you for a lot of the same reasons you said. But, I just think that McCord could be a lot closer than a lot of people think. And he could, if Ryan Day is going to give him 2 weeks to prove himself, he might take 2 weeks to prove himself. And so, be interesting. But yeah, I'll go with you, Stroud, the starter.
Okay. I like that. So I'm going to say for running back, not necessarily the starter. I'm going to say most snaps, most productive. Trevion Henderson is who I'm going with. I just think he's in a class all by himself. He has already shown that physically, I think he's ready. I mean, I've heard that kid is like smashing any lower body workouts that they've had for freshmen in the past. So I think he's ready for it. We've seen freshman running backs, J.K. Dobbins, Beanie Wells, Maurice Claret, guys that came in ready right away. I don't see why he wouldn't be. So I'm going to go with him as your most productive running back starter by the end of the season.
Yeah. The crazy thing is I agree with you here too. So, but like to me, where maybe I disagree with you is that what's the definition of a starter? Because like if Master T comes out and starts the opening snap and then Trevion's the primary back for 85% of that opening game, is
right.
Teague the starter? And that's kind of like where some of the funny stuff is. I think Henderson's going to end up with the most snaps against Minnesota. I mean, I think basically he's basically to me going to be the starter to start the season. I think that he's going to get the most snaps right from the get-go. I think and it's not saying that Teague's not going to get a lot. I think Teague's going to be in a lot of situational plays. I could see him being the only running back in there when they're inside, the 10-yard line and goal to goal, just because, they want just somebody to smash someone through. And Teague always runs hard on the goal line. He always takes somebody down and, pounds it into the end zone. And so I easily could see, Teague being type of a situation guy. And I could see Teague being marched out every game as the quote unquote starter. And then Henderson kind of slides into the game and, he's taking the bulk of the snaps.
And that's not forgetting Mayan Williams either, who looked good in the limited time that he got to play last year. I think with Teague though, I honestly I think Henderson gets more playing time. I think Teague is just killer in a role that he gets to go in when guys have been chasing Henderson around all game. They're tired. And then you bring in that big body that can run.
Yeah.
And, they're not moving as quickly as they were in the first quarter. And now they're trying to arm tackle Master Teague.
Oh, I could very easily, especially if his legs are healthy, I could easily see on a 3rd and 1 situation in the third quarter, and these guys are tired, that he breaks a 40-50 yard touchdown and he's just in to get that 1 yard and he ends up taking it to the house because, they're tired. And once he gets through that first level, there's none of those corners want to even mess with him. And
I think you're looking at like 2 very productive running backs.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I do think it's going to be Henderson. That's who I'm going with. I just think that I think he's going to be just the real deal. I'm so excited about him. I think that's the next big. I'm going to say something here. I think he is going to end up being at Ohio State what everybody thought Maurice was going to end up being at Ohio State, because
very well could.
And because you cannot say Maurice Claret is a better running back than any of the big running backs that came after him. I mean, Beanie was obviously more productive. Zeke was more productive. Dobbins was more productive. Hyde was more productive. I mean, those guys all they were there for the whole time.
Right.
They ended up doing a lot more. But I think if Maurice got to play his 3 seasons, possibly a 4th season if he would have stayed, but he wouldn't have, that he would have been arguably the best back at Ohio State. He might have not, he got to Archie's records, but he would have been, right up there, and, Tressel would have ran him a lot. And so he would have, he would have had a lot of stats. I mean, I think probably Zeke and Dobbins would have been passing him as number 2,
I could see that for sure, but
that's what I'm gonna say. I think Henderson is going to end up what a lot of people thought Maurice Claret was going to be at Ohio State. I think that's what Trevion Henderson's going to end up being. I think he's going to go down as just in a lot of people's minds. Archie's still the best running back that's ever played at Ohio State. He's got the Heisman's, he's got the yardage. Unless you play 4 full seasons, it's going to be very hard for you to get to that type of
right.
Unless you can get to basically you'd have to have 2 seasons of 2,000 yards.
Dobbins had 2,000 yards in a season. I mean,
it's possible. It's just there always seems like there's enough running backs in the room that it's not.
He won't do 2,000 this year. Possibly next year he could get 2,000.
And if he had another big time close to 2,000, then he would get it. I mean, Archie's is what, 56, 55.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's possible. It's definitely possible. but I just think that he's going to be that special guy. So I'm really looking forward to him playing, and I think he's going to be just unbelievable.
All right.
Your receivers.
All right. I'm going to just do all three at once. My two outside starters, of course, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. Slot, I got to go Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, and I honestly, like, as crazy as it sounds, I don't think you're going to lose a ton of what Garrett Wilson was last year in the slot. I saw that guy doing like cone drills type of thing. I don't know how anybody in the middle of the field is going to be able to hang with that guy, because he can change direction so damn quick. Like, it's very impressive.
There's already talks he might be the best route runner on the team, and like that's just crazy to think of. And again, I mean, his agreement central here that I agree with you, the three that,
and I don't think we have to say anything about Wilson and Olave. They're
the starters. It was always going to be. Now, if they were going to keep Wilson on the slot, I think that there would be a lot of interesting talks there. I think right now that they might even feel Wilson is still the best slot out of the bunch, maybe, but they might just think that Wilson's so great on the outside too, and Jackson Smith is the best slot next best slot guy, right, that this makes the most sense. I think we would have a lot more interesting discussions, because like if Garrett Wilson was still playing slot, I would say, like, this is just hypothetical, I would say I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to end up being the outside starter.
Maybe Julian Fleming's still there though. Emeka Ibuka, like that guy, he's a stud.
I think those guys are. I think Ibuka is more geared to play slot, and with Jax, I think those guys would have been the backups to the slot, and I think that's what's going to end up being. But they're all going to get a ton of playing time. It sounds like Fleming's healthy, and I'm really looking forward to what this. I mean, this could be the scariest 6-man deep rotation you've ever seen. And like Wilson and Olave might get legitimate times this year where they're actually allowed to take breaks, at least one of them being off the field that they don't have to be on the field at the same time.
You might see both of them off the field at the same time.
You might not be missing a beat. Like literally that's how good this receiving core could very easily be. And
they showed, I mean, I know like spring games are spring games, but you saw what Ibuka and Marvin Harrison Jr. could do already. So, yeah, it's going to be exciting. Now, hopefully, they don't get, I mean, there's always a transition level from your first year, going from high school to going to college that you're not used to the grind. So hopefully you don't see that happen. Yeah. You just see these guys,
I think there's
kick butt all year.
At least there's enough, they have enough guys around them too, that there's going to be no relying on either one of them. So I think they'll be able to handle the grind, because they'll probably get their reps won't be as crazy. I mean, Olave and Wilson will still get the most reps on the team.
Absolutely.
But it's just going to be nice to know that, like, hey, you guys could take some breaks here and there. And like last year, they were completely dependent on. And as you saw, the offense was kind of lost until they finally decided that when it was funny, because Trey Sermon, playing Northwestern last year, was like, yeah, this guy could take over the game. They should just let him take over the game. And like Northwestern's not even touching him until 5 yards down the field. And like,
not even that, man. That was. Yeah, he should have got the ball every.
And then it was finally like in the third quarter, like halfway through the third quarter, it's like, all right, let's just let him they're not tackling him, so let's just let him.
Wow, their passing game was so out of sync.
With Olave being,
Olave's Al, and I mean they did have a good plan for Justin, and they had a good pass defense, so that was just like, hell, let's just run all over these guys.
Yeah, that's
how we're gonna win this game.
So I agree with you. So all right. So who's your breakout? Who do you think is the guy that at the end of the year, and it doesn't have to be any of the guys you just picked.
Right.
Who do you think is just going to be like, wow, I'm so glad that guy's on this team. Like,
Julian Fleming. I think Julian Fleming's he's going to shine.
One of the two guys I was thinking. And so I will be different from you on this one. I'm going to go with Emeka because I think they're both going to shine. And I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to shine too. I really could have went 3 deep on that one because I think these guys are all going to be the real deal.
I mean, we could have said Mayan Williams, it's like, and before we go to the next one, it's just, especially if Quinn Ewers comes in, I mean, can you think of a college team that's ever been like at a skill positions this offensively loaded that your quarterback room, your running back room, your receiver room, it's almost like there's 2 too much talent in all of them. It's like, it's crazy. Like, that's not something you should complain about.
Yeah,
it's an embarrassment of riches.
It is. It's kind of the one thing that's made me nerve right now. I would never argue that I wish we had less talent. Like,
right, exactly. Yeah.
Like, it's a great problem to have. There is a problem to it. I mean, there's one football and there's a lot of people that could be game changers on this. Now, you got to do your best to spread the ball around, and in the receiver room, they're going to have no problem with that. I think every one of these guys, especially now that G. Scott has moved to tight end, which, I think he could be something crazy too. What you could be expecting out of that room, like that. I think there's going to be, all 6 of those receivers. And when I say 6, I think my top 6 guys are going to be, it's Olave and Wilson, obviously, but then you got Smith, Najibba, and Ibuka are going to be kind of your backup roles in the slot, and Harrison Jr. and Fleming are your backup roles on the outside. And, and then you throw in like McCall and a couple of the other guys in there too, that are going to obviously get some spots here and there. But like, I think those 6 guys, I think they're all going to feast very well this year. And I still think Wilson and Olave are going to end up with 1,000-yard seasons. Like,
yeah. And the one thing about the receivers too, and I don't know, like Marvin Harrison, I mean, maybe he doesn't transition well, like into the slot, even though we've seen big guys before that are okay in the slot, especially, learning from his dad, who every now and then, he'd slide down to the slot and Peyton Manning would hit him with a big play action touchdown for like 40 yards or something. So he probably knows how to run those routes out of the slot. But all these 6 guys we just talked about can pretty much play any position at that wide receiver room. Like they can line up anywhere.
No. And you're going to see times where they're going to move on motions and different things. They're going to move Wilson and Olave down the slots, and let's see a safety try to, because that's going to be a home run. They're going to be trying to take one right down the middle of the field. And so
Jackson Smith and Jigba can line up outside. Julian Fleming can line up outside.
No, it's just a great room. These guys, I mean, I really do think Fleming and Emeka are going to be just, and Harrison Jr. too, but that's why I think Emeka, when Ryan Day loves those crossing routes, and you saw Emeka was really dominating in spring game, like, man, he's going to be like right at home in this offense. And so that's why I think that's why he's going to be a breakout. That I think he's not going to be one of my 3 guys that are starting, because I think Jackson Smith and Najibba is the better player for that position right now. He's going to feast in this offense too.
Oh, absolutely.
For the same reasonings, but my God, and a lot of times when those run those crossing routes, those are coming out of 4 wide receiver sets, and they could be on the field at the same time.
They're right. If they're both on the field,
crossing each other and basically doing those natural picks, and whichever one comes free is going to be the one that's going to get the pass. And
right.
So, yeah,
I mean, you got a more talented room than what you had in 2018, at least on paper, and just what those guys did with Dwayne being able to distribute to them. Yeah, watch out for it. All right, MVP pretty much of the offense, skilled position. I got to go with the quarterback, just with all the weapons. I'm saying CJ Stroud.
I agree with that, but I'm gonna be a little different. I think that I think it's the obvious choice is CJ Stroud. We're in such a pass happy world now that it's always going to be your quarterback. But I'm going to say Trevion Henderson. And here's my reasoning why. I think that this team is going to average 400 passing yards and 250 rushing yards a game. And I could see 150 yards a game being Trevion Henderson. And when Ohio State is running the ball the way Ohio State runs the ball, there's no way you're stopping this team offensively. This team is loaded to bear. They will kill you through the air. And my God, if they have a running game behind it, good luck, because they are just going to dominate. Especially, they are not going to play a legitimate team that could line up players to stop them until they would get to the playoffs. Like, and as long as they could survive the opening of the season.
Yeah.
And I think if they played Oregon and Minnesota were the last 2 games of the season, and they were playing the Kent State Akron, I think they're playing Akron and Tulsa this year. If those were the openers and they were playing those two teams aren't handling. The only reason why I'm giving those 2 teams shots against them is because it's the opener. You are throwing a new quarterback out there. You got a lot of returning players in Minnesota, and Oregon is not the same Oregon that you once was. And so I just hope that these guys are just not, when they all talk to former players. I hope that the former players aren't like, Oregon's cupcakes just because Oregon was cupcakes for you. I don't think they're cupcakes anymore. So
no, Oregon's got a lot of talent, and he does have them, playing a more physical, tougher brand of football.
No,
but I mean, again, we'll see. We'll see what our line can do against their defensive line, because
they've never, when everybody talks about, when you hear from Oregon fans, when they talk about this is not the same Oregon team you guys have played. I mean, like, you guys have never played an offensive line or a defensive line like Ohio State has in the Pac-12. So right. like
they beat Wisconsin by 1 point in a meaningless Rose Bowl game.
Yeah.
Which I think was kind of controversial if I remember correctly, but Ohio State that year beat Wisconsin by double digits twice. Like, it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So, yeah. I'm going to just to be different. I think my MVP is going to be Trevion. I think that he's going to be ended up being that. He's going to be like that Najee Harris. That's like how Najee was last year for Alabama. It was just like, good luck trying to cover these wide receivers. And because we got this guy too. We got the battering ram that we'll just throw right at it. He'll just run right down your throat, and you pick your poison.
Right.
So
now he's not as big as Najee Harris, but I mean, can you imagine having that for 3 years though?
Yeah, exactly. And under mixed conditioning and stuff like that, I mean, who knows where where do you think in 3 years where he's going to be weight wise? I mean, I think he'll be bordering in the 220 to 230 range, I would think.
I don't think he needs to get up to 230.
I think he has the frame that could hold it.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Zeke was 225, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing with Mick. I mean, he could be 230 and look like just a complete rock, chiseled rock running at you. I mean, Zeke was 225 and he had no ounce of fat on him, and
they call the guy Baby Saquon because he kind of goes to that whole, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley school of thought, lower body workouts, just building up the legs and the ass. And so, yeah, he's going to be, he'll be a tough dude to bring down.
Yeah. Definitely looking forward to the season. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad to see when the reports start flowing in next week about
it doesn't seem like there's any way the season's getting canceled or postponed. So
I think Kevin Warren would really be in hiding then at that point, because I think this has just been such a crazy thing. I mean, there's nobody wants to go through another. I mean, I know there's more important things than sports, but I think a lot of the things that people have to understand, what angered a lot of people last year, is that sports are one of the few places where a lot of people get their release in this country. They have long days of work and they just want to go watch their favorite teams play. And, those were the few things that, they enjoyed and stuff. And they're, got to watch their favorite teams play. So,
and I didn't need fans in the stands.
It'll be nice to just have them.
Absolutely. It'll be nice to have them, but I wish I would have just got a full season last year.
Yeah.
So much crap.
I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing, I don't know what Ohio State's, we still are waiting for what their fan policy is. I know there's still some, COVID issues out there, but I know that the pro teams are all allowed here in the state of Ohio having full stadiums, so that, I know Ohio State is allowed to have it. I mean, that's pretty much, there's nothing in the government wise that's going to stop them from having it. That's up to the university. And I don't even think that, I think the Big Ten is probably going to make that this year. It just seems like that's going to be, I think, because they kind of said that in the spring, kind of going forward, that they are going to, fans in the stand is going to be left up to the schools and the individual state governments, how their decisions are. So I think that's what's going to happen. So there could be some places where Ohio State travels to in the Big Ten that might not have full stadiums, but I have a feeling that we will be having a full stadium here in Columbus.
Let's hope so.
So, yeah, looking forward to the season starting, though. I mean, it's going to be nice to get football going again.
Oh, absolutely. All right. You ready to get out of here?
Yep.
All right. Good. Thank you, everyone, for coming out today to the Buckeye Bar. As always, if you want to comment on Twitter or YouTube, we will respond back to any comment you leave. So please interact with us. Let us know what you would like us to talk about. I'm John.
And I'm Mike.
OH.
Hi-oh.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Buckeye Bar Guys on Buckeye Bar Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that all notifications bell so you see when new content is added. And please remember to like and share so we can grow our audience. Don't be afraid to comment. We want to know what you're thinking and we want to know what content to add for you guys. OH.
I-oh.